Chaos is not a pit, chaos is a ladder. That is a famous quote from Game of Thrones, but it is also the iron law of financial history. Do you think war breaks out because of territorial disputes? Do you think massive migrations are just random humanitarian tragedies? Look deeper. Behind the columns of smoke from bombs and the flow of refugees is the hammering sound of architects resetting the global monetary order. Blood spills on the battlefield, but money flows into the pockets of those designing the game. Welcome to today's special report, War Migration and the Birth of a New Financial Order. We will expose the brutal truth. Crisis is not an accident, it is a tool to transfer power. The financial system has a characteristic. It has enormous inertia. When everything is stable, people will never accept giving up their rights. You will never accept handing over gold, accepting devalued currency, or accepting total control if life continues normally. To change a monetary system, you need a force majeure. You need a fear large enough to make the crowd voluntarily sacrifice their freedom in exchange for safety. And there is no fear greater than war and social collapse. History shows that every major financial order is born from the ashes of great wars, no exceptions. Order out of chaos, or Ordo ab chao, is not just a slogan of secret societies, it is the textbook of central banks. Let us go back to 1914. Before the gunshots rang out in Sarajevo, the world lived in the era of the classical gold standard. This was the golden age of free trade and price stability. 1 British pound was a fixed amount of gold. $1 was a fixed amount of gold. Governments could not print money indiscriminately because they were bound by the gold in their vaults. But World War I changed everything. War is extremely expensive. To feed troops, buy weapons, and maintain the killing machine, European governments needed more money than the gold they had. They faced two choices: stop the war because of lack of money, abolish the gold standard and print paper money indiscriminately. They chose the second way. They suspended the ability to exchange paper money for gold. They started printing money to finance destruction. The result, hyperinflation devastated the European middle class, but more importantly, it shifted the world's financial center from London to New York. When Europe was drowning in debt and ruins, America emerged as the biggest creditor. War did not just redraw the border map, it redrew the capital flow map. It ended the era of sound money and opened the era of state-managed paper money, where inflation became a feature, not a bug. If World War I was the punch that shook the old system, then World War II was the finishing blow to erect a new empire, the dollar empire. In 1944, when bombs were still falling in Europe and the Pacific, 730 delegates from 44 nations gathered at the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Why at that time? Why in America? Because at that time, America was the only major economy still intact. America held 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. Europe had become a wasteland. Great Britain was bankrupt. Japan and Germany were destroyed. In that situation, America placed a deal on the table that the world could not refuse. The dollar would be pegged to gold at $35 per ounce, and all other currencies would be pegged to the dollar. Bretton Woods was not a cooperation agreement. It was a document of financial surrender. It turned the US dollar into the global reserve currency. It allowed America to export inflation to the whole world. It created the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank tools for America to control the economic policies of other nations through loans. The most devastating war in human history was used as a springboard to establish the absolute hegemonic power of the dollar for the past 80 years. But military war is not the only tool. Let us speak of a more sophisticated, quieter weapon, but one with equally powerful social structure, destructive power, weaponized migration. We are witnessing massive migration waves from south to north, from east to west. Why is this related to finance? Look at Europe and America now. The social welfare system is buckling. Public debt skyrockets to pay for social services. Cultural structure and social cohesion are eroded. The chaos caused by migration creates immense pressure on national budgets. It breaks fiscal balance. But, more importantly, it creates a reason for digital control. When borders become meaningless, when national identity is diluted, and when criminals as well as terrorists take advantage of migrant flows to blend in, what solution will the government offer? We need digital ID for everyone to distinguish who is a citizen and who is an immigrant. We need to eliminate cash to stop cross-border terrorist financing flows. We need universal basic income to soothe social instability. Do you see the script yet? Migration crisis is the perfect catalyst to push for the deployment of digital ID and Central Bank Digital Currency or CBDC. It forces nations to give up traditional monetary sovereignty to join a global control network under the name of security and humanity. Chaos is the excuse. Control is the purpose. Back to 1971. Once again, war played a central role. The Vietnam War and the Great Society social programs consumed huge amounts of money for America. America printed more money than the gold they had. France and other countries realized this and started demanding to exchange dollars for gold. The American gold vault bled. On August 15, 1971, Richard Nixon appeared on television and announced the temporary closing of the gold window. The final link between currency and real value was severed. The Bretton Woods system collapsed. We entered the era of pure fiat currency, the era of paper money with no intrinsic value based only on faith and military power. To maintain the value of that paper, America needed another war or another threat. And they created the Petrodollar system. The deal with Saudi Arabia. We protect your throne, you sell oil only in US dollars. Once again, military power war and protection was used to anchor currency value. Global oil demand forced the whole world to hoard dollars. And now, where do we stand? Look at Ukraine, look at the Gaza Strip, look at the tension in the Taiwan Strait. These are not isolated conflicts. These are the fracture lines of an old order collapsing. The petrodollar system is dying. Saudi Arabia is considering selling oil in yuan. The BRICS nations are hoarding gold at record levels to create a new payment system. America and the West weaponized the dollar when freezing Russian assets. This action sent a chilling message to the whole world. If you do not obey, your money is no longer yours. This triggered a race to find alternatives. The current war, whether hot war, military, or cold war, trade and tech, is the painful labor process to give birth to a new financial order, or Bretton Woods 3. In this new order, currency will no longer be based on debt like the current system. It might be pegged to a basket of commodities, gold, oil, energy things, that the East, meaning Russia and China, hold. Or the West will push CBDC as a final fortress to keep capital control, preventing people from fleeing devaluing currency. The current geopolitical chaos is the necessary smokescreen to cover the bankruptcy of the Western public debt system. When inflation goes out of control, they will blame war. Inflation caused by Putin, inflation caused by supply chain breaks. They will never admit inflation is because they printed money to bail out banks and fund wars. Ladies and gentlemen, history does not repeat verbatim, but it always rhymes. Every time the world changes the monetary system, it comes with pain, blood, and tears. 1914, war leads to end of gold standard. 1939 to 1944, war leads to Bretton Woods. 1971, war leads to petrodollar fiat. The 2020s, war migration pandemic leads to what? That question mark is the New World Order. It could be a multipolar system based on real assets. It could be a global digital gulag. Whatever the result, the transition process will be extremely brutal. Wealth will not naturally disappear, it just transfers from one hand to another. It transfers from those holding paper money, victims of inflation and currency exchange, to those holding real assets and power. It transfers from the naive middle class to the prepared elite. So, what must you do? Do not look at newspaper headlines and feel fear or useless anger. Look at the money flow. When gunshots ring out, ask yourself which currency is benefiting. When borders are erased, ask yourself what control system is being proposed. Do not bet your future on fake stability. Prepare for chaos. Because in the eyes of those designing the game, chaos is the ladder for them to climb to new heights of power. And if you do not have a grip on that ladder, you will be kicked down into the abyss.